Welcome back to Road Gang Radio. Join Jimmy Mack and Lindsay Lawler's Gang of the Airwaves by subscribing to Radio Nemo on YouTube.
We celebrate all kinds.
Make it official. After all, if you're listening, you're already in the gang. The Road Gang.
We'll make the transition in a moment here into Maintenance Matters. Want to give you a quick heads up, though, that in fact today, along with Lindsay joining us at 9 o'clock in the center, 10 o'clock in the east, it's another edition of Trucking with OIDA. With the Trump administration cracking down on ELP and non-domiciled CDLs, there's an important issue at the very center of the conversation: driver training. Lots of folks are doing it right, but too many are not, which is what led them to reach out to, well, regular contributors to this show. Our friends at the CVTA, Executive Director Andy Polikoff and Chairman of the Board Jeff Burkhardt are going to be joining our friends over at OIDA. It's a chance to really dig in deep to talk entry-level driver training standards, CDL mills, and the Training Provider Registry, and much, much more. Hey, guys, we're going to take a quick transition here and make our way into Maintenance Matters just in a moment here on RadioNemo.com. Hope you guys have made your way over to the tube of you and hit that thumbs up button. Do the same thing over on Facebook as well. Wherever you're listening, if you can give us a shout out, a comment, a thought, or even a question for our guest, we're always happy to kind of throw that into the conversation. And we turn now to Maintenance Matters.
Oh, yeah!
Maintenance Matters, of course, is our good friend Kevin Lindsey joining us on a weekly basis every Tuesday. He, of course, is the manager of technical service for TravelCenters of America, and we are always thrilled to have him here. Guys, go to ta-petro.com to find out more about what TA Petro can do for you while you're on the road or while you're in the shop. Hey, Kevin, good morning. How we doing? We are getting a little bit cooler down here as well. Late fall is beginning to settle in. Time is now running out, and we are running out of things to talk about in regards to getting ready for the winter. There's so much more we've got to address. So we're going to kind of put a button on it today. How are you, my friend?
Well, I've been better. Been dealing with a little bit of a cold here the last couple of days, so I may be a little hoarse here. So
well, that's okay. I'm a big ass, so it all works out perfect.
Good transition, guys.
Thank you.
I can't laugh. I'll start coughing.
I understand. Let's kind of pick up where we left off because, guys, if you're just joining us on the previous episodes of Maintenance Matters, we have been talking about getting ready for those winter months of doing, I guess, a long sort of October, early November sort of pre-trip inspection for the entire season. And we were talking about fuel in particular when we last left off, and I wanted to make sure that you could pick up the ball from that point, and then we'll move forward from there.
Yeah, that's no problem. But Jimmy, before we do, if you don't mind, I would like to mention something out there. There's
Please.
a little story circulating there from around the Nashville area about a cat that was lost at a rest area on I-40 west of Nashville here at the I-40 rest stop at mile marker 170. The cat was lost about, I think it was the 1st of October, and the owner came in, told the people at the rest stop, hey, he lost his cat, and then he went on, but he never left any contact information. Well, they found the cat, and the cat is safe, but nobody knows who the truck driver was. So I just thought I would throw that out there, in case there's a truck driver out there listening that may have lost a cat on I-40 in Tennessee back in October. So,
and by the way, there's always hope. I don't know if you heard the opening part of the show, man. Did you heard about what happened? The couple lost their dog 5 years ago, and they found it 520 miles away.
Wow.
5 years later, and the dog was in good health, and the last people that found it had actually, done the local thing, trying to see who locally owned it, and then went and got the chip checked out and realized that it was from Loosedale, Mississippi.
Wow.
And they drove out there, and the dog is actually, Penny is in good health and thrilled, and recognized them. I did a little more digging, recognized them instantly, and was like, literally had that thing, the soldier's homecoming with the dog. You know, the dog just went nuts, dude.
Yeah.
So people, don't give up hope, man. I literally had a friend of mine who found her cat 3 years later. She found it. She was across the lake from New Orleans and was at a home in Covington, and across the street she saw the cat, and they said, it's a neighborhood cat, and she's like, it's my cat, and they didn't believe her, and then they brought the SPCA out there, checked the chip, it was her cat. So there's always hope. There's always hope.
That's right. For your service. That's right. All right.
Unbelievable. Go on, as we like to say sometimes. Tell us about getting that fuel, getting everything around the fuel ready for winter.
Well, yeah, that's another thing, because a lot of the stuff with fuel, I know we've been talking about seasonal maintenance and different things like that, but a lot of the stuff with the fuel system are things that, should be things that you're doing basically every day. You looking down in there with the flashlight, looking at, making sure you don't see too much debris in there. I know we talked about a lot of that last week and everything, but, most of the modern trucks, newer trucks, all have fuel water separators on them, and the reality of those things is it's kind of like air tanks, even though, we have air dryers and everything nowadays, and you hear stuff from different people saying, well, you got an air dryer, you don't have to drain your tanks. Well, that's not true. You still should drain your tanks, on a regular basis. Most OEMs recommend still draining tanks on a daily basis, but and maybe not necessarily completely true, but those fuel water separators, a lot of times the OEs will recommend those being drained, on a daily basis. I would say at minimum a weekly basis.
Let me ask you really quickly, Kevin, just to kind of give people a sense of this. Talk about the long-term. We always talk about long-term damage. Talk about the long-term benefits to doing it at least on a weekly basis. How it can actually extend the life of your vehicle and create less maintenance possibilities.
Well, a lot of people, we think about fuel and water, we know they don't mix.
Right.
And we know that the fuel's lighter, so the water's always going to settle at the bottom. And that's why, these drains for fuel water separators and things are on the bottom. Well, when the water level gets too high, it can get picked up and pieces of it, little pockets of it can move through the fuel system. It can actually get pressurized and then sent out to the head. But here's what happens, because it's not fuel, as it moves through the system, being a liquid, it gets pressurized and it moves through the head out to the injectors. When the injectors go to inject it, now all of a sudden it's in temperatures well above 212 degrees, and it's water. So water don't burn like the fuel does when it gets atomized and sprayed into that cylinder. It actually becomes steam and expands is all it does, which takes up more space, which can actually cause a broken, it can destroy rings and piston crowns and all kinds of different things. Most of the time it will just simply blow the tip off of the injectors. So, and then once that happens, then you got raw fuel running in. And now you got fuel bypassing your rings, getting down in your oil, diluting your oil. You've got a miss, and all these modern electronic engines. The other cylinders are making up for it because it's got one that's slowing down faster than the other, so it's trying to fuel more on others, and all of a sudden, all it's doing is creating. It just compounds on itself. It creates this monster of a problem, and it don't take that long. When these things happen. So you really don't want that water to make it out into that fuel system on that engine, nowadays with everything with such high pressures and, so many things looked at. And the good news is a lot of the newer trucks here with the EPA regulations and things like that, they have water in fuel sensors, and a lot of the newer trucks will have water and fuel lights and stuff on the dash. So if you see that, highly suggest go drain that fuel water separator. You know, you want to get that off because if it stays on, it can actually derate a truck nowadays. So
It's interesting too, because I don't know if you know that today is National Common Sense Day, and I guess the most basic kind of note
really,
here, yeah, I guess the most basic note here is that water does what water does. I mean, that's
yeah,
I mean, I don't want to make it sound so basic, but the idea is think about what the destructive properties of water are when it gets to 200 plus degrees and what
yeah,
it could possibly do and kind of set that in motion. That's really crucial. The other thing I wanted to kind of mention, which is why these lights, we go back to the beginning of this entire conversation that we started weeks ago. It's so important. We had the conversation with the Castrol guys too. Check the lights because you're right that so much of what is now new in trucks is compensatory, that trucks will often continue to do what they're supposed to do by compensating despite problems in there, which is why the lights come on, that the truck may seem to be doing what it's supposed to do, and it is, but it's compensating for something that has gone wrong, and it's only by checking the lights that we know that something is wrong. Is that fair?
that is fair. That is extremely fair, and that's because there's so many times I hear, well, you know, I had a light come on, you know, a couple months ago, but it went back off, so I didn't think nothing about it. Mm. Well, sir, that's why you need an engine now. You know, I hate to tell you that, but that's, I mean, I've had those conversations with customers, and it's tough. It's tough.
What
It
is the
really
thing is,
is tough.
it basically, I mean, the way to think about it was, it's not my job to warn you every minute of the, I mean, I hate to put it that way because maybe it should. It's not my job to warn you every minute of the day. I told you, you didn't listen, and now here we are. You know, I mean, basically,
Oh, yeah.
basically, you're blaming the messenger. So he only told me 2 or 3 times that I had, you know, that I had that I had lights on my
Well,
dashboard. You know, I mean,
well, not to try to get too much off subject here and talk about history, which you know I'm very prone to do when we start talking about you know modern trucks and everything, and I'll talk about the good old days sometimes, and you know sometimes they weren't necessarily so good, but you know when these electronic engines first came out back in the 90s, I remember you know the big talk was, oh, you know, hey, be able to save an engine now because we can shut it off for low oil pressure, low coolant. But you know what happened in those time frames? By the time we get around to 2007, when DPFs came out and regen issues and people shutting, we had a lot of trucks just on the sides of the roads everywhere because they needed regens. No one understood how the systems worked and what they were doing, and you know the trucks were shutting down for all this. A lot of fleets and even OEMs then started taking those shutdown functions for low oil pressure, you know, low coolant levels all out because they had so many problems with sensors, with other things in the system to keep from shutting down so that they could continue taking their load. But what that's done over time is it's created this monster where all of a sudden now you've got these trucks with these problems, but they have to meet emissions, and by trying to do that without shutting down, you know, they're compensating in other areas, you know, to make sure the air fuel ratio is proper, regardless of what's going on. So it's going to keep going. So it may have turned the light on, but there's a good chance if you turn the key off and back on or something at some point in time that it didn't come back on, but it don't mean the problem's not still there, you know. So it's always good to check that stuff out and try to get up on it, because if you don't, you know, because a lot of these safety things built in that we used to see so much built into the engines are not necessarily, and a lot of them, you know, programmable parameters in there. So, but a lot of them's no longer in there by default. So,
yeah, and the other thing is too, it's like sometimes people program themselves to be not inconvenienced. I'm laughing because right as you said that, Tom Bray wrote on the chat, just like Penny on The Big Bang Theory, I just put a little tape over the light so I can't see
that's
it
right.
anymore.
That's right. That's right.
One of my favorite
Well,
moments of all time.
my check engine light. your check engine light's on, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to put some.
Well, I put a piece of tape over it. It's okay.
Yeah, that way I have to tell you, I mean, there are people, even truck drivers, who like see those lights and want to live in the state of a river by Egypt.
Well,
I mean,
I don't want to tell on people, but I got to tell this since this came up with the whole tape thing and everything. I did have a student, a technician in class from a fleet technician years ago. I'll not mention anyone, but it was just after EPA 07 stuff came out with DPFs, and we got to talking, and he's like, "Well, yeah, we got a highway response kit or something." He called it a safety kit that they keep in their trucks. I said, "Well, what is that?" He said, "Well, it's a roll of black tape and a toothpick." And I said, "Okay, the black tape I get because you're putting it over the stop engine." He said, "Well, the DPF lamp when it comes on," said, "but all of our trucks have engine override switches on the dash, so the toothpick so that they can hold that button in and just shove the toothpick in there to keep it open so they can bring it back home." I'm like, "Oh my God."
You have been outed. We have, and by the way, this person is fortunate we are not naming names, by the way. Good God Almighty. Good. I don't know
You got to keep freight going, right?
I got to tell you, though, it's like this is a constant ongoing conversation. The number of people who, turn into Scarlett O'Hara, where I'll think about that tomorrow, is kind of staggering to me. I mean, it really is. It's like, by the way, let me ask you a question straight up in regards to how you talk to customers. Light goes on. How soon, when that light goes on, should you actually be finding a place to talk to somebody about it?
Well, as soon as possible, honestly. I mean, it really depends on the truck and the customer I'm talking to, because if the driver understands, because most trucks nowadays, when you do get a check engine light, there's usually a way on the dash to get some sort of description of what that's for. So, but here's the thing: it can come on, the light can come on, but there may be multiple codes that's set. So you don't ever know which one actually turned that light on. So it takes a little bit of training, a little bit of research, in a troubleshooting process to really decipher that. So it is best to, take it somewhere, have someone hook a computer to it and take a look at it. I mean, that's always your best bet. I mean, the stuff on the dash can tell you a lot, and there's a lot you can do on most of these trucks from the dash anymore. But you really have to understand how those different codes and everything work together. So.
All right, we can keep on this for a while, or
yeah,
and the thing, no. We'll go to Kingdom Come on this. I mean, by the way, guys, Kevin Lindsey and I could talk about in regards to pre-trip maintenance and checking everything to get ready for the winter. There's a lot of stuff to cover here. Would you like to move on to cooling systems and the heaters, or you want to talk about the filter conditions in regards to the fuel?
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to replace your fuel filters naturally, but yeah, on the cooling system, because I know really we were supposed to wrap this stuff up last week, but I just felt like we needed to give it another week of talking about. But the cooling system, I think a lot of times, I'm not going to say it gets overlooked nowadays compared to the way it used to, but just making sure. First of all, making sure, kind of back to the engine belts and things like that, you got to make sure that's all good. And when you get PMs done, make sure you've got a good record of what the freeze protection was, SCA levels, different things like that. But heaters, one thing I want to mention is because there's so many trucks out there nowadays with auxiliary heaters and things like that in them, and for no idle and stuff like that. If you have those auxiliary heaters in your truck and they're fuel fired heaters, one of the biggest problems I've ever seen with those things, and I know this is really probably the wrong time of year to talk about this. I should have talked about this when we started talking about HVAC back in May, but even through the summer, most of those fuel-fired heaters, regardless of the brands, but if they're actually pulling diesel fuel out of the tank and firing to heat that truck for no idle during the cold months, those things need to be run even throughout the summer, because if they just sit there for 6 months, the first time you go to fire it up, there may be all kinds of problems. I mean, because all of a sudden there's things going on that hasn't occurred in months, and so you could have dirt dauberness in the exhaust that's going to back it up, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems. But most of those fuel fired heaters for auxiliary heaters, the manufacturer will tell you that once a month you should fire those things up for 5 or 10 minutes. It just very short periods of time, but just enough to keep everything working and everything intact. That was really what I wanted to. One reason I really wanted to get this out there, because it seems like I see a lot of people complain about those things this time of year. It starts getting cold, and all of a sudden, hey, I fired this thing up and it's not working. Well, when's the last time you used it? Oh, it's April. Well,
by the way, just on another side note, because we never get into side notes around here. So yesterday we had our first. I wouldn't call it cold. It wasn't cold at all, but it was 49 degrees, and of course this is an old building, so there was an ice box thing. And Dre came over and he said, "Look, I'm going to turn the heater on just for a minute to kind of get this place not so just not so kind of nasty." He said, "But I want to brace everybody up because this thing hasn't been turned on, the heater, in forever because we're in New Orleans." He said, "Just brace yourself for the aroma, for the smell."
Yeah.
Because sometimes
right.
when you don't run things, sometimes, and then you run them, you're like, "Ooh, what? Somebody let something into the room." I mean,
yeah, dust will burn. Dust will burn. I guarantee you get it hot enough, it's going to burn, right?
Yeah. By the way, over on the chat, one of our listeners, by the way, is going to go to the gun range on his day off, and they're all calling it aromatherapy. Just wanted to kind of put that out there for you. I thought you might enjoy hearing that. Let's talk about those cooling systems and the heater and the belts and the radiator cap and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, really what you're looking for, as you're looking over that cooling system, first of all, is leaks, right? Because years ago, I don't seem to hear quite as much of this as I did years ago. But when I was a technician, and a lot of the engine manufacturers and truck manufacturers switched over to a lot of these higher silicone content hoses, coolant hoses, and things like that. When it would get cold outside, we would start seeing what we always call cold water leaks, meaning when it got really cold outside, all of a sudden you see these leaks. Well, we would find those and basically just tighten up clamps here and there. But those things still occur. These processes have gotten so much better from manufacturers. There's so many hose clamps nowadays that aren't even the old screw type hose clamps. They're all latched on there with the special tools and all this stuff. Naturally, that's one thing we got to do is build a better box sometimes. So we can sell a new tool too. So it seems like that's the way it works. But I won't go there. But these things do still happen, and you can see that, and that's one reason you always want to look underneath. On that first cold morning. Take a good look. Make sure you don't see any coolant dripping anywhere. And, if you do, just always, gravity is going to work. So it's going to, wherever it's dripping on the ground from, don't mean that's the part of the engine it came from. It's going to depend on what type of are you on an incline, or you parked on any kind of an incline or slope, or is it, from side to side, front to back? It's going to drip at that.
Well, it's going to run down stuff too. I mean, that's the other thing too. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hate to sound so, like even that micro, but I mean, if the split or the rip or the tear is a little bit higher up, but where it's coming from is on any kind of slope, it's going to make its way down the tube before it drips. It's going to find the lowest place of gravitational pull to find its way to the ground.
Oh yeah,
and that's kind of.
I mean, I've seen a leak at the top of the back of the engine, where, actually on the firewall of the truck, or the front wall of the truck, where a coolant hose goes across there. I've seen a hose leaking there, but it's actually dripping off the front of the engine by the oil pan at the very front up next to the fan, and people thinking there's got a water pump leaking because it's dripping out the front. And, unfortunately, if you see that and do that, and you go into some shops, you may tell them, hey, I've got a water pump leaking. I need a water pump. Okay. Well, they go put a water pump on it. Guess what? It's leaking again the next day. Well, that's because it wasn't that. It was this hose clamp way at the back of the engine. So, you got to pay attention to different things like that. So,
By the way, guys, Kevin Lindsey joins us this morning. We're almost out of time. We got about a minute and a half left to go. I do want to remind you all that this has been a fairly comprehensive look at seasonal maintenance. We began a number of weeks ago. If you head over to Spotify, Pandora, or any place else that you get your podcast, all you have to do is type in Maintenance Matters. It will come up. It has its own page. And if you've missed any of this, you can actually get a whole overview of seasonal maintenance by simply listening to those episodes. I tell you what, Trey, next time Kevin comes on, we're going to open up by me telling people where the seasonal maintenance episodes begin and where they end and how we kind of progress our way through that. There is a Castrol oil break in the middle of that, but it's fairly comprehensive. Kevin, is there anything else we want to touch on before you shuffle off this radio coil?
well, be safe out there. That's really about it. Be safe. Give those trucks that once over. Give them that good once over when you're doing your pre-trip inspections, whatever. All of the different things we talked about. Just what's the old saying? Kick the tires and light the fires, right? So, probably do a little bit more than that, a little more in depth. But very good inspection overall. Can go a long ways and save time and money down the road. So.
Saving time and money down the road is what Kevin Lindsey, the manager of technical service for TravelCenters of America, does for a living. He actually tells you all about it in a segment brought to you by ta-petro.com called Maintenance Matters here on radionemo.com. Kevin, we didn't get everything, but we got a lot, and a lot of our friends will do the diligence they need to do in order to make it happen. We'll figure out what to talk about next week now, having finally moved through seasonal maintenance. There's still plenty on the docket. Thank you.
We're going to go into breaks, by the way, just so you know.
Oh, fantastic! And by the way, you sound terrific. Glad to get you set up on that. It sounds great. It's like you're in the room. I'm telling you, dude, it's great.
Yeah, it sounds a whole lot better.
All right,
I finally got on this thing.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. Have the best of days, and we will talk soon. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, thank you.